My name is Shirin Mohit. I'm a clinical psychologist and JCOD team member, if you couldn't tell from the purple polo. I am honored to be here with the esteemed members of the panel today. And in essence, we're going to have a conversation. And it's a conversation about supporting the justice-impacted person in the reentry space. Trauma exists, before. We've heard a lot of stories, before, during, after, and really trying to support that human being and having a conversation about how can we better support them? How can we identify gaps, fill the gaps, to really support that human? So in the interest of time, I'm just going to jump into the questions. The panel members will get to introduce themselves as they respond to the discussion topics. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor to the panel with the first question. Where are we now with regards to addressing the needs of individuals who are transitioning from incarceration back into the community, and where should we be going? Anyone can respond. No particular order.
Well, obviously we all have different responsibilities, but, from our end, we're very invested in ensuring that the people that are coming back are going to have the opportunity to be successful. We know that if we are not attending to housing, mental health, job training, if we're not attending to the whole reintegration process, our success rate is very low. We also know that when we spend time having a thoughtful reentry process, our success rate is very, very high. So we work with the Amity Foundation, we work with ARC, we work with other organizations. We work with Susan Burton and her organization for women. Our goal is to really move us away from the traditional system that we've had for many years, where we basically give people a few $100 and tell them to go back and figure it out, and then we all scratch our heads when they can't figure it out, to a system where we facilitate reintegration in our community, and quite frankly, a system more similar to what we see in other nations like Scandinavian nations or Germany, where reentry is actually entertained from the point of entry as opposed to an afterthought.
Hi, I'm Lezlie Murch, Chief Programs Officer for Exodus Recovery, and I truly believe that we have come so far from where we used to be. There are so many different types and specialty services available now for folks re-entering the system after incarceration, through Department of Mental Health, through Department of Health Services, certainly through JCOD. We operate a number of those ourselves. JCOD has stood up a beautiful platform where you can call in, go in, get connected to a provider, get connected to immediate services like transportation. We operate programs where we're literally standing in Men's Central lobby, engaging men that are walking out of the door into the lobby area to say, what can we do for you? What do you need? And I'm so proud to have so many of my team members here that showed up to support me today. And we build teams in a very holistic way now. We've got clinicians, we've got paraprofessionals, we have so many people with lived experience, we have medical people, we have everyone that you can think of to really holistically approach folks leaving incarceration and connect them to services.
Thank you, Lezlie.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reba Stevens. I'm a community advocate, a person with lived experience, justice involved, substance use. I've experienced 21 years of my life unhoused on the streets of Los Angeles, victim of domestic violence. I consider myself a survivor today. And the question is, where are we now?
Correct.
We are a lot further than when I was last arrested back in 1998. And prior to 1998 and the 9 other arrest and release from jail, I would get a release at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can hear them right now because it's still traumatizing. Stevens, 48579, roll them up. And people would run to say, they called your name, you're going home, but they didn't know I didn't have a home to go to. So when we think about where we are today, we are moving in a much better direction. But I always want to uplift the critical importance of people like you, D.A. Gascon. And I have to say it, this is election time, and Proposition 36 is on the ballot. Nobody told me I couldn't talk about propositions because I'm a community. I ain't got no badge on me. And I am voting no, but I am also voting yes for you, sir. And the reason is because we have a whole lot more to do. But what I would say to those that are on this panel that are providing services is an area of where it is critically important is to recognize whether or not we are providing adequate, appropriate, and timely services. So we can applaud ourselves all day long about all the good things that are going on, but that's the serious question. And the reason is because coming from where I've come from, it's really about that moment in time. When I'm ready, you need to be ready and stay ready. So when I say I'm ready, that everybody's ready. Because that's the only way that things are going to change. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. Well said. And thank you for lifting up how far we've come, too, right?
Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Wong. I'm the director of the Department of Mental Health, and I just want to echo Ms. Stevens' sentiments. I think it's so important to have a recognition of how far we've come. I remember, I spent my first over 20 years of my career working in the Skid Row area of Los Angeles, and I remember what it was like for my people to come out at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with nothing more but a little bit of money and nowhere to go, no home to go back to, and what that was like for them. And we don't, for the most part, don't do that today. We have wonderful programs in place. We have court liaison programs. We have a lot of high acuity programs. We have programs that meet crisis needs. And this is really important because there are estimates that are close to 40% of the incarcerated population have mental health issues. So where are we falling short, though? Because even with all these wonderful services and, they're all across the county, we still have a more than 50% no-show rate for post-release appointments in our programs. So I think it's so important for us to be that right program, offering the right services, listening to what people want and what they need coming out, because I think we can believe in what we do and the programs that we put out there as much as possible, but if they're not meeting the needs of the person who's coming out of the incarcerated setting, it's not going to be of much use. I can't do anything if somebody doesn't show up. And I think what's going to be very important is to see what we do with this new CalAIM benefit with jail in reach and to see how much progress that we can do there. Hopefully we can build that relationship while somebody is still in that setting so that they know they have somebody they can depend on when they come out.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hunt, and I'm the new director of the Office of Diversion and Reentry over at DHS. And to follow the footsteps of my colleagues on the panel, I think the biggest thing is not only do we have opportunities in spaces like this to have the conversation and county to recognize Department of JCOD to bring these things together, but we also housing, we have mental health, we have all these other programs, but we need housing. This is a huge connect. And so that's one of the things that I think as we look forward in the collaborations and in the partnerships and how can we work better together, but housing is a critical piece to this puzzle about how to help. And so we've been bringing a lot of because of those no-show rates to Dr. Wong's clinics, we've been trying to bring the services in-house, literally into the house, so that we can provide them, right, and be ready. And if someone says, I don't want it today, no worries, we will be here tomorrow. So, to that.
There was a recent study that came out done by RAND about one of the intercept models that JCOD operates that showed that 35% of folks that show up at arraignment are homeless, and an additional 42% are living in temporary situation, couch surfing or with friends. So that's almost 80% of folks that have been arrested that are coming in for arraignment that are currently homeless. So homelessness is a huge issue for our population.
I think, too, it's important to be reminded of communities, environments in which we live and breathe and hope to thrive. And we have underserved communities where resources are lacking. And why it's important not to divide by 5, but, or by 8, but to really address where the needs are. Because prior to becoming unhoused, I was a mess. I was kind of sassy. But I didn't have anxiety, high levels of stress and depression. It was when I became unhoused. I was a student. I was studying business administration. There wasn't a cloud on the horizon when I became unhoused. And it changed everything. Because when I met alcohol, my very first drink, I had arrived. It numbed the feelings from the thoughts that were going on inside of my head. And from there, it just exacerbated. So it's really important that we have real honest conversations here, and not only about, tooting our horns about the successes, but let's also acknowledge some of the areas where it can be improved, and particularly for organizations like the program of ODR that is critical. There was no ODR, child, there was no JCOD, wasn't no warm landing, wasn't no safe landing. None of these things existed. That's why it's really important to uplift that things have improved, but we still have a very long way to go.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens, for bringing that up, because that kind of relates to our second question. Given what you all have shared with us, what continue to be the gaps, the challenges that we face, and how do each of you believe that we can get to where we should be going?
Well, I think Dr. Hunt, touched on something very important, and that is readily available and appropriate housing. Not just like congregate shelters or something like that, but, housing that is respectful and supportive to a person. And that has to be at the ready, and it can't be conditional. We have in the past had housing resources, but you have to participate in mental health, or you have to participate in this or that. And it's just got to be, okay, housing is automatic and it's a right. And then we build around the person. Let's take care of what's basic first. And again, it gets to, listening to what people actually want, what they actually need, and have that at the ready and something that they can count on. I think a lot of the folks that we have worked with who have, been incarcerated have experienced multiple system failures, so that it's really hard to trust that somebody's really going to come through with something. Like, if, for example, if you have a post-release appointment at a clinic, if you knew 100% they would actually come through for you and have housing for you and have appropriate treatment, food, and all these things, I think we'd have a pretty good show rate. But until we can establish that kind of trust and that credibility, that's where the gap is.
Yeah, I'm hearing that from you, Dr. Wong, and I'm hearing that from you, Ms. Stevens, about just the mistrust that surfaces for individuals, and that leads to just wanting them to pull back, right? And so that leads to those no-show rates. So thank you for sharing that. Other panel members want to lift up some gaps?
Yeah, and Ms. Stevens just talked about the barriers. And first of all, I want to echo the issue of housing. I think that we need to understand that it has to be housing first, right? And it has to be, as Dr. Wong indicated, it has to be unconditional. I think that the concept that you can condition housing upon jumping a bunch of hoops for someone that is not in a place to jump those hoops, all it does is it continues the process of recidivism and continues a downward spiral. So we must, as a community, understand that housing is first, it must be unconditional. I think that we also need to understand that each individual is different, and they're going to have different points of jumping in and jumping out. And we have to understand that people cannot be forced into services or treatment, but when they are ready for services and treatment, if they're not there, then there is a missed opportunity. And that, frankly, is the fear that I have when people talk about forced treatment, because the success rate of forced treatment is extremely low. And when you really peel the onion, even when you think it was a forced treatment that was successful, it really wasn't, as the individual was ready. And then at that point, then there was the aha moment. So for us, there are a lot of barriers, right? So obviously, ideal in the world of the intersection between some level of criminality and mental health, unhoused, many other things. And what we often still struggle with, and where we are lacking, and I know that I'm now repeating what others have said here, but is having programs that are actually that are suitable for the particular person that we're dealing with, and that we have housing that is assisted housing that is going to have the right level of services. So that continues to be a challenge for us. Now, there are many others too. I think culturally, we still have a lot of people that think that you can force people into treatment, and unfortunately, that is a fight, and it's a barrier both with the bench, and frankly, it's even a fight sometimes within my own staff. And law enforcement is still a strong belief that you can force people. And without getting too political here, we know that actually we have some things coming up on the ballot that are going to talk about forced treatment, as if we hadn't learned that doesn't work. So and I'm very proud to work with this current Board of Supervisors, because we have some incredible leaders in the Board of Supervisors that get it. And, but we're a long way to go from there. And we need to continue to push for that housing first and appropriate housing that is specific to the needs of the individual.
Also, I think continuing to broaden the safety net, which I think we're doing. Folks are supposed to be connected in the jail to Department of Mental Health if they have a mental illness, to Department of Health Services if they have a physical health condition. That doesn't always happen. JCOD is there to sort of try to engage anyone who doesn't fall into those two categories, which I think they've done a great job with, but it's just continuing to look at the system holistically and filling in those gaps. And it can be as simple as transportation. Somebody needs transportation home from the jail. Who can do that? And while they're doing that, how can you build that trust and rapport? So then later down the road, that person trusts you with their mental health appointment or their physical health provider or other services that they might need. So it's little things like that that I think we're now beginning to pick up on, but we just need to continue to broaden that safety net.
So when I think about barriers, I'm oftentimes reminded of what services were like when I walked through the doors of the Department of Mental Health on November the 2nd of 1999. So I am proud to tell y'all I have a mental health date. And the reason is because I needed so desperately. When I arrived, I was facing 4.5 years in prison on a 4.5 years, a 3-year joint suspension, 3.5-year joint suspension. And I received cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, certainly, by the time I arrived, I had been outside for 21 years, and I was in a treatment facility. And one of the first things that happened was they wanted me to meet with a psychiatrist to give me some pills for my depression. And I'm looking and I'm saying, wait a minute, I've been doing that. I've been doing that for 21 years. If I am depressed, I need to know what that is, and I need you to walk me through recognizing it, putting a face to it, experiencing it without substance so that I can understand, and then we can talk about some psychotropic medication. And it was critically important, but through cognitive, Lisa Wong, behavioral therapy, I was able to be myself, to see myself, to make the necessary adjustments about myself. And I tell you, D.A. Gascon, my last arrest was July the 10th of 1998. I haven't been arrested since. And I owe that to Dr. Lorraine Allman and Dr. Paul G. Longobardi with the Department of Mental Health for supporting me and building a solid foundation beneath me. Now, why am I saying all this? Y'all may have to tell me to pass the mic. I'm saying it because that doesn't exist as it did then. Because see, we were addressing the mild to moderate, and this is before MHSA, right? And so when MHSA came in, a whole lot of things changed. You know, we lost, in my opinion, from the end user's perspective, we lost more than we gained. And until we began to allow folks to be able to have a conversation, how many of y'all in the audience know that talking is healing? Even if you're calling up your girlfriend, or you got a good relationship with your mama, somebody that you could tell the truth about the truth to, and how it feels a lot better once you know that somebody knows that deep, dark secret. It's something, it's magical, and it's necessary. The last thing I'll say is around substance use disorder. When I came through the doors and getting sober, we were not passing out paraphernalia. So there was no harm reduction program. And I am so grateful that harm reduction, in the form in which I experience it, did not exist during that particular time. And so we really have to open more doors. So I would encourage everybody in this audience who's listening to don't just listen, hold the people up here accountable. Please do. Please go back and look and see if you can find what folks are talking about. And because we want more of it. We all in this room must be advocates for the reason as to why we're sitting here in this space today.
It's very hard to follow that, so I'm not going to try in that way.
I love ODRs, by the way.
Oh, no. But, Dr. Longobar, all of the people, I used to work at DMH. I used to work for Dr. Wong, so until a few months ago when I went to ODR. So I just want to say, I think one of the biggest concerns right now is that there's a lot of things that are attacking the county's deliberate mission of care first and jails last. And so that, I think, is I just want to be able to name it and to say that this is something that we need to consciously continue to address in different ways to make sure that our services are integrated, collaborative, and coordinated so that we can do the best job to help the community.
Thank you. I just want to lift up what everyone has said is, we use this phrase a lot in the clinical world, but meeting the person where they're at. Listening to the human being, not a one-size-fits-all system for each human being. So that's really what I heard from everybody today. All right, so today is about togetherness, right? And so how can we work together to address some of those gaps and move forward? For example, what kind of supportive services and/or system changes are needed for the individual to navigate the reentry space and have their needs met? Thoughts from the panel?
I really have to say technology is key here. We don't yet have information systems that communicate with each other. And we all know that, those of us that work together. It would make things so much easier. I know we're working toward that. Again, I want to highlight JCOD's wonderful platform that they've recently developed, and they're developing their own information hub, clinical system. But again, hopefully we'll be able to speak to the others so we can really holistically follow our clients and the people that we work with. And one thing I do want to say is probably starting about 10, 12 years ago, we all really started integrating services to a much, much greater extent. And that's made such a significant difference in the lives of everybody that we treat. So I just wanted to highlight that.
I'll go next. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that integrating information and services is critical because what we still see sometimes, right, is sort of people operating in a vacuum, right? One part of the system may not be fully aware of what is going on in another part of the system, and I think that when that occurs, there's a drop in the capacity to provide the most appropriate services or intervention at the time. So being able to integrate our communication system so that we all have access to the same information, and there are challenges there, by the way, especially when it comes to medical information. We know that there are privacy issues. The same thing occurs in on the criminal side. There are certain things that cannot be readily shared, but there are ways to get around that. There are ways to create memorandums of understanding and create a shared vision for that information to be shared. And then the integration of all the services is critical in order to be successful. Frankly, in my case, we're fully dependent on all these partners that are here, right? We really are not we're not service providers. I was going to say we really are not. We're not service providers, right? We come at the intersection of an arrest and a person being presented for potential prosecution, and what will be most helpful, quite frankly, for me and for our work, is to be able to have that capacity to do the warm handoff almost immediately, because not every arrest needs to lead to a prosecution. In fact, we know that many, especially in the space that we often are navigating, a prosecution may be actually counterproductive to the well-being of the community and the individual. And I think that the more that we can educate the public, that actually is in the best interest of the entire community and public safety, to have the right levels of intervention so that we do not have the reoffending, which is when we have additional victimization, not only for the person that is being accused, but other people around the community as well. So having the public understand what is at stake, why this is a better approach, integrating our services, integrating our communication systems, for my side of the equation is critical, because for us really is just being able to almost be the traffic cop, for lack of a better word, that says, yeah, we're going to go with a diversion and turn it over to somebody else, or we're going to move with the criminal side of it, which often provides really less than optimal services.
I do think the information sharing is really important. I think for very practical reasons, so we know what's going on with all of our partners. But I think also from the client perspective, I mean, if you can imagine what it's like for somebody to have to tell their story again and again and again, and it can be very re-traumatizing. And also make you feel like you're just this anonymous person moving through this system and nobody really knows you. So I think as much as we can share, people's information, that's really helpful, and I think in their clinical best interest. I think also, though, when we talk about building a sense of connectedness, we want this for our client. We want them to be able to reestablish a sense of connectedness with themselves, with the people around them, with their communities. But I think it needs to start with us, too, as partners, that we have to feel a connection and communication with each other and have that kind of trust and collaboration so that what we can give a client feels seamless to them. It doesn't feel like something that's chopped up or something that, they have to go to different places to get their needs met. But I think oftentimes when we think about how we can help people coming out of incarcerated settings, we forget that it starts with us. And I don't mean us just as the DA and mental health and whatever. I mean us as people in the community, because a lot of times one of the things I hear most often from people coming out of these settings is they never felt a sense of connection. They didn't feel they had a support system, and that's what makes it very difficult for them to move on in their lives and to feel like they can have some kind of future. So I think when we can be more connected as a community, we can wrap ourselves around the people around us, then we can help prevent some of, what happens, people falling into incarceration, people falling into substance use, people going, untreated with their mental health. We have to look out for our own well-being, but look out for the well-being of our circle, look out for the well-being of the community. And if everybody kind of approaches it with that sort of perspective, that builds a stronger safety net for everybody who is a part of the community.
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. How can we work better together to address some of those gaps and move forward? For example, what kind of supportive services and/or system changes are needed for the individual to navigate the reentry space and have their needs met?
Well, for me, it's really about ensuring that a person has a place to land. And I'm talking about a true safe landing, that there should be a plan. But even before one gets arrested, don't you ever wonder, what happened? What'd you go to jail for, right? Or is there unmet needs in the community? I like to use the word environments, in the environment in which one is in to thrive. Look at right now, right now, everybody wants to say overturn Prop 47 because of the smash and grabs, right? But then, we forgot that we had a pandemic. Everything is high. Gas is high. And I have to ask myself, who smashed and grabbed? And I want you to know I don't promote crime because I'm an ex-criminal. But who's smashing and grabbing or smashed and grabbed to survive? Now, that's just something to really pause and think about. And I'm not suggesting that everybody, should just, that's the case. But it is something to think about. I also want to remind us that when we talk about individuality of, folks, that's the same thing with crime. There are situations sometimes and circumstances that occur in people's lives as to why they do what they do. I know firsthand. Did I tell you I was arrested 10 times? I've been in jail 10 times. And it's really important that we really think about what we can do. Because it's always about, they say it's systems and they say in communication, but sometimes it's about money, right? Because that means that I got to blend my dollars with yours. And I don't want to blend my money with you. And I'm not suggesting that that's exactly how it goes, but sometimes it's a money thing. Because you don't want to always give up your money, right? You sometimes don't want to share. It's the same thing that I believe that happens in these systems. And so we're going to have honest conversations about what needs to happen, then we really have to begin to take a look at the systems in itself. Because back in 2015, I think it was, the county had moved to a health agency for integration. So integration ain't nothing new, child. I sat on what they call the IAB. And we created lanes for communication to happen. Right? And so I don't know if those lanes are still existing, but I do want to stress, and I ain't talking to y'all no more. I want to talk to the people up here with me because it is so vitally important for us to remember that the people that you're serving are human beings, and that if they did not exist, we wouldn't need you. We wouldn't need any of you. If the people outside who are sick and suffering and hurting or committed a crime and ended up in jail, we wouldn't need you either, child. We wouldn't need you, DA gas goes.
Please put me out of work.
And so I say that to say, are we doing enough? And I think that I appreciate the questions that are being asked here today. But I really expect a little bit more from JCOD. And what I'm expecting is the hard question, because we have to really pull at the heartstring. We in trouble, y'all. If anybody here lives in Los Angeles and you ain't got to go but a few more blocks to hit Skid Row, but guess what? Skid Row has no longer concentrated. It has grown. And anybody who is experiencing being unhoused or falling into it on the cliff, can I hear y'all say cliff? On the cliff? You know, because you may find that a whole bunch of us in this room may be on the cliff. That it is really important that we recognize what time it is. This ain't time to play no more. This is not time to play. We got measures on the ballot that we don't know what's going to end up happening with those measures, but this is serious talk. And if Prop 36 is passed, you think we in trouble, we in real trouble. So if you are thinking about voting for that particular measure, I certainly hope you do your homework. I hope you do your homework, because we do not need any more mass incarceration. We need to be eliminated. Now, that don't mean that we don't pass it and then not hold folks accountable. But see, we shouldn't have to all just show up in places like this. We need to figure out means and ways to stay together so that we are constantly pushing for the interest. Everybody that's sitting in here, you're in here for a reason. There was something about this particular panel that got your attention. I hope it was me. I'll stop there.
Ms. Stevens, that was powerful. In the interest of time, I just want to keep us moving forward. But what I'm hearing is not just looking at behavior in a vacuum, right? There's reasons why we do the things that we do. And if we just focus on the behavior, we don't have the full picture, right? So thank you for lifting that up. Please go ahead. Yes.
That?
Yes.
To that, and to the question of the backstory. And so to me, when we look at the why, that's also how we try to help somebody in the future and moving forward. And the things that clinically we may have diagnosed in the old book a few editions ago, now, because of what we know, the role of trauma. So that would be with the why and the story, and not to speak to the smash and grab specific, but how much of that is that trauma, that unmet multi-generations of trauma that now we're seeing in different ways? And how can we do a better job as colleagues, team members of different departments in the county to be able to try to help individuals through that lens, instead of this, okay, what's wrong with you? No, it's part of your story. Tell me how and what happened, and we can address that and make real change.
We need to link arms. So I'm being told that we have a very short amount of time left. Are there any questions? We can take maybe one or two questions.
Hi, thank you all for everything you're offering. Thank you. Hi, thank you all for being here. We appreciate your knowledge and wisdom. I just want to know, is there more ways that JCOD could do more things in the community, like cutting red tape, getting, maybe going more into the schools and offer wraparound programs, not to just the kids who need help, but people are really suffering, and mental health is a big challenge, but a lot of the mental health challenges come from the environment, the conditions that they're growing up in, what their parents are going through, and economic challenges. So are there ways that JCOD could kind of cut red tape to go into the communities?
I'm going to have the panel members answer that, because it's not, we're together today, so all of the different systems to respond to that. And we have, I think this is the last question we can take, so we're going to answer that and we'll end the panel for today.
She pointed, I'm going to talk. All right, so I think that there are some of the things I can speak to JCOD, because this is where some of the programs within the space come together, that they do have some youth programs. And I think that is one of the places that it'd be great to see, especially with some of our county partners with DYD and others, to be able to do some of that work. As a former school teacher, I hear you and I totally agree. So I'm not pitching my department on that one. I see you and I hear you.
as a member of CARES First Community Investments, I want the lady who asked the question to know, JCOD is doing amazing work. And it's a we thing. And so I would encourage all of you to be more aware and informed about how broad in the community, particularly underserved communities, that JCOD is making a difference under the CARES First Community Investments. And I can't tell you, I mean, it's breathtaking to actually experience the graduations, or those who have benefited as a result, small CBOs in our community that is serving directly in the community. Change is actually happening, and it's important for you all to be aware of it because, perhaps there's something out there in the JCOD world for you. But just know JCOD is doing the darn thing.
I want to second that. JCOD is doing amazing things. I don't work for JCOD, but they have an incubation academy that's lifting up small businesses in the community and training them on how to deliver services and how to contract with some of the bigger agencies. And I also really want to say thank you to everyone who's in this room, to everyone who does this work, because we're all out there spreading the message. And the more we spread the message, the more we normalize and destigmatize incarceration and justice involvement, the healthier our community will become. So, thank you.
And I think, JCOD can also be a wonderful platform to reach the community in terms of empowering them, right? Because I think no matter how much mental health we get out there, no matter how much funding we have, that's not going to be the only answer. It's going to take community interventions where we empower communities to know how to work with their youth, to how to work with their families, their children, to build strong, resilient members of the community. And I think JCOD could be a really wonderful platform to do that, to bring those kinds of interventions out there so we can really be in this together as partnership. You can have the treatment aspects of it, but you've got to have the love surrounding you, right? The people in your community with their arms outreached to catch you when you fall.
Thank you so much. I'm being told to wrap up, so
So as you're wrapping, let me just tell y'all something. So, because truly, this is the Los Angeles County Justice Opportunities. What is JCOD?
Justice, Care, and Opportunities.
Justice, Care, and Opportunities Department. And it's doing amazing work. But I just got to tell y'all a secret. And I don't want it to be a secret. But Judge Sung-Hai Armstead is very, very unique when we look at the county. And if any of you, if you don't know, you need to find out. Because if we're looking for change, it begins with her. She is really about change and affecting change in a way in which I've never seen. It warms my soul. It warms my heart.
thank you so much for being present with us today to have this important conversation, to lift up different perspectives on these growth processes, and again, to ground. And I know we're talking about systems, but that we're talking about a human being at the end of the day. So thank you so much for being here.
You know what? I'm going to take a quick interruption here because I think Ms. Stevens knew what was coming next, so she wanted to do this bridging for us. But I have to agree with Ms. Stevens. And, Judge Sung-Hai is really an incredible leader, someone with tremendous amount of commitment and passion for this work. And I have to tell you that when I first got elected almost 4 years ago, we met, and I was, well, yeah, but I mean, yeah. I was in a different frame of mind. But, I couldn't help but be impressed by your passion and how earnest you are about the work. And I don't think so much of what is happening today would have occurred without your leadership. Now, we expect a lot more out of you, but I wanted to recognize you for what you mean to me personally as a part of this system and the difference that you're making. And, with systems that, quite frankly, sometimes seem intractable, right? So we have a small certificate commendation from the district attorney's office that we want to present to you for the incredible work that you do for our community. I didn't realize you were back there.
I'm lurking in the back.
Okay.
This is actually for everybody in the room and everybody that's here, because I definitely do not do any of this alone. And so all of you guys are partners in the work, and I want to say thank you and 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 thank you. Because you see that word together, that's why it started with that, because I don't want you guys to think this is my job, this is our job. Together we thrive, not by ourselves. Thank you.